Hello, beautiful beings, shiny, sparkly consciousness souls. Thanks for dropping by. I don't know where this one's gonna go. This video, this is a topic that I've been sitting with for almost 9 months, and I guess it's time to bring something forth after 9 months. Short version on this channel. I've recommended on numerous times, I've recommended a book by an Advaita Vedanta teacher, and someone has posted, given me some allegations against this teacher. And so now I find myself in the very interesting position of um, that I have not oodles and oodles and oodles of respect for this teacher, but I have some respect, and I've done some one-on-one Skype calls with them, read their book, read some articles. So now the tables have turned, right? This channel started with me critiquing one particular teacher, and now it's kind of turned into uh, just identifying and critiquing unhealthy spirituality in general. And lo and behold, accusations have been made towards someone who I used to look to for some guidance. So it's helped me to. So first of all, it hurt to see those allegations. Um, just it's not like I was in love with this teacher, but I had warm feelings towards them and gratitude towards them. So it's helping me to empathize with. I've criticized sometimes by name. Now I don't do it by name anymore, but I've criticized a lot of people, a lot of teachers on this channel who a lot of people really love. So, in this moment, I have a lot more compassion than I think I have since I've started this. Not compassion for the false teachers, though I do have some compassion for them, but compassion for the students, the devotees. Um, you know, whether or not what I have said about other teachers is true, and of course I'm convinced it is. Now I don't even talk so much about teachers. I talk about teachings. Hey, Abeer, thanks for saying hi. Please do share any comments, thoughts, or feelings. Thanks for dropping by. I talk more about teachings, but just my heart is going out to all the people who are attached to false teachers. It's a painful thing. And the thing of it is there's gonna be accusations, that are false. That's just the way of it. People make false accusations all the time. So, now back to me. Yeah, at first I was like, yeah, I was shocked to hear the accusations, then there was some pain, then there was some denial, then I took a look, um, and, then Then there was, not so much denial, but just kind of I mean, maybe you could call it denial, just like, "No, those accusations, they don't resonate with me," but as I've sat with it, there's definitely something there, um, and it's this whole, weird thing of, innocent till proven guilty, yet absolutely have to take accusations seriously, uh, uh, you know I liken false spiritual teaching to rape. It's a spiritual form of rape. Now the difference is, I think a lot of these teachers aren't don't know what they're doing. I think a lot of these teachers actually think they're enlightened and actually think uh, they are teaching, teaching the truth and helping people. and false teaching is as destructive as rape. For if someone takes it seriously, it'll really fundamentally disrupt them in their life. Um, so when it gets so tricky with the internet, about accusations. One of the accusations against this teacher who I like, it's a very strange accusation. N- The person didn't name them. The person wrote a book about a cult-like atmosphere, and in this book, the villain, the false spiritual teacher, hypnotized a student and then took advantage of them. And then, so this person wrote this book and published this book, and then dropped little hints that this might be about this particular teacher. And like that's just a messy way to make accusations. I can't take something like that seriously. Um, yeah, so I feel comfortable dismissing that. Now, the second was a letter by someone who used to be a part of this person's sangha. I know they were. I verified that they were a part of the sangha, but interestingly enough, they were kicked out. And after being kicked out, they wrote this. So that's initially why I was like, oh, it's just da da da. But when I really looked at it, there are some legitimate concerns that were expressed. So I'm being it's hard not sharing names, but I'm sharing all this because this is not this is murky area we're in. I'm not saying murky like um uh true and what's not true get mixed. It's murky, it's hard to tell. And we're dealing with internet and you know uh so and that's part of the reason why I stopped naming names unless it's absolutely necessary, because it's murky, you know, unless you have direct observation of activities, then we're dealing with shadows and things that are whispered in shadows. This is not to discount any accusations towards spiritual teachers, but it can get a little tricky. Let's see, what does Abeer have to say? Yeah, Abeer wrote, "Well, I see teachers as pointer. The teacher is not important. The teaching is, as long as truth be told." So uh, I see that as a very healthy mentality. But the thing is, and so the thing is most people, but before taking that healthy mentality, how to determine whether the teacher's teaching is true or not, right? How to determine if it's truth. So what I did, and a lot of people did, is we make this assumption like, oh, this teacher's enlightened, so they're telling the truth. So I can trust what they're saying. But and so what you say is that that's a reasonable thing, is not to focus so much on the teacher, but focus on the teaching. But that still leaves us with the question of how do we know the teaching is true? And what I've come to is the only way to really know is there's really two ways to go about it. One of them's kind of dangerous. So the first way is to know the scriptures, to know the Gita, to know the Upanishads, to see if it's in alignment with that. And the second is just to treat yourself like a guinea pig of like, oh, well, I'll try this out and see how it goes. Um, and I did that and it got me in a lot of trouble. So I don't recommend it because a lot of teachers claim to be teaching something in a tradition, but they're really just kind of making something up. Yeah, good, good. Keep sharing it, Beer. I'm curious to hear your experience and wisdom on this. So, so to the person who wrote to me about, these allegations, so the first allegations, it's absurd. Well, it's not absurd. It's an absurd, like I just can't take it seriously. Writing a book and then dropping hints that this may or may not be about a certain person. And um, so now if someone just oh, and the other they hypnotized them, they drug them, and they had sex with them. So I could take if someone just came out and said, "Hey, this teacher did those things," I would listen and take that very seriously, but the way it was done, no. The second, I can mostly dismiss, that person, and the thing is the person didn't really make they basically wrote an essay. They wrote an 8-page essay that has all these allegations, that's basically yeah, it was basically an essay with very little like, "Hey, this is what happened." But there are a couple things in there where the person said, "Hey, this was said," or "This was said," or "This was done." That's what I do take I I think there's some truth to some of the things that were said, and, yeah, and it's actually clarified for me, like, okay, this teacher is not a guru. And the interesting thing is this teacher is not a renunciate. They're married. And so I'm to the place where if someone wants to teach Advaita Vedanta, which is a renunciate path, and they're not a Swami, they're not a formal renunciate, I can't take it seriously anymore. Um, yeah, that's just kind of where I'm at. Cool. Abeer, curious to read. In the past years, I have learned to not get attached to teachers because no matter what they are, some things not perfect. Yes, well said. What I'm curious about, Abeer, is how do you determine if a teacher's teaching is true or not? Because, like I said, and you said you did the same thing, we'd be like, oh, this teacher's enlightened, so I can trust what they're saying. So, okay, so we've taken that off the picture, like not focusing on the teacher, but how do you determine if what they're saying is true or not? Another thing I used to do is like, oh, if it feels good, it's true. Or if I start to have a spiritual experience or spiritual feelings around a particular teacher, then what they're saying must be true. But that's not reliable either. A false teacher can zap people with Shaktipat. I've experienced it. So yeah, I'll be curious to hear your thoughts on that. Um, Anyone else, feel free to chime in. I think it's inquiry. Inquiry, yeah. So here's the thing. Um, and I haven't talked about this, and it's really fascinating. So hold on one moment. So part of Hindu philosophy is um is a question of how to determine truth. Because um I'm gonna post a link for it. Because that's what we're talking about right now is so how do you determine if a teaching is true? And so each Hindu school has their own sort of set of rules or principles. The technical term for it is called epistemology. How do we know what's true is true? Like it's one thing, mm, one sec, I'm looking for an analogy. Well, I'm not gonna, yeah. So So it comes back to this question. How do we know that what a teacher is teaching is true? How do we know that a teaching is true? Well, Hindu philosophy has a set of um, a set of concepts or a set of, you could say, practices or process to determine whether or not is something is true. They have six ways to determine whether something is true. Direct perception, like, okay, like I can knock on this chair, or I can knock on my chest, and it's solid. So, of course, we know from a physics perspective it isn't solid, but on a relative level, I can conclude, okay, my chest is solid because I've directly perceived it. Uh, the inference or indirect perception. Um, and of course, this is not my field of expertise. Please read up on it a little bit. Um, what would be a good inference or indirect perception? I'm not even going to comment on that one. Comparison and analogy. Um, so, Advaita Vedanta uses quite a bit of comparison analogy. One of the most famous ones is that if you take gold and melt it, you can turn it into a ring, but the ring is still, the gold is unchanged. It's just taken a different shape, but the goldness of the gold hasn't changed. And so that's taken to, in Advaita Vedanta, you can go many directions of it, but one of them is that, this world that is in Advaita Vedanta is God. Uh, the nature, while the shape of it has changed, the fundamental nature is unchanged. The next is postulation, which I'm not gonna, um, the next one, non-perception. I'm not gonna even go there. The last one is shada, word testimony of past or present reliable experts, which includes various scriptures. Now, in Hinduism, there's different schools, and then different schools have their own rules, but there is this process to go through to determine whether something is true or not. And so, Abeer, I honor that you're going at it through inquiry. Um, the thing is just going at it from our own. Oh, good. There's some more comments. Oh, hey, Belle. Hey, Belle. You inspired this video. I don't know how long you've been here. Uh, I'll I'll speak. Welcome. Um, So the only concern I have with, so first of all, I respect anyone who seeks truth, and it's very easy. The quest for truth is quite murky. Maya and ego are quite thick, so that's my only concern with relying 100% on oneself. So um, let's see what else Abir said. Well, I had an insight about what is truth, and that which is permanent is truth, and that which is not permanent is false. Though this is maybe not the right, but that's just my insight. Feel free to comment. So, um, and by the way, Belle, I'm so glad you're here. Your comments inspired this video. So this is in response to some of your comments about that teacher who you shared those allegations. So thank you for that. So, Abir, that's in the modern Advaita Vedanta world, um, that's kind of the running definition. And um, my only concern, and so first of all, if you want to follow that path, by all means, um, I like to keep it simpler than that. So I would say that which is not eternal is just not eternal. See, Adi Shankara never said that the world isn't real. He said the world is assat, which is a Sanskrit word. Now you can one translation, a legitimate translation is unreal. Um, Another legitimate translation is not eternal. another legitimate translation is not true. So what I would suggest, Abir, so what I would suggest is that you meditate on the word assat because it's translation. And so not just meditate on the word assat, but meditate on the implications. So um so again, and there's many possible, but one translation, unreal, one translation, not eternal, another translation, not true. And so for me, I got in a lot of trouble thinking the world is not real. And I got in a lot of trouble thinking the world is false. Now, there are many philosophers who will argue that that's the meaning of assat. Um, so that's all I have to say about that. Uh, I mean, it's a deep question. Where I've come, this is where I've come to with it. Is it's like it's unreal, but it's not unreal. That's just where I've landed. And the analogy I use is that which is not eternal is like a penny, and that which is eternal is like $1,000,000. When you compare the two, a penny is nothing. Compared to $1,000,000, a penny as if it doesn't exist, right? Like if one day I gave you $1,000,000 and one day I gave you a penny, on the day I gave you the penny, it would truly be like I was giving you nothing. And that doesn't dispute its uh, that doesn't dispute that's where I've landed with it. And another way to say it is temporarily existent. So the thing is, so here's the thing where I believe people have mistranslated a thought. It's one thing to say unreal, it's one thing to say false, but it's a whole nother thing to say non-existing, which again, it's non-existent. Which it is a legitimate translation of Assat, 'cause Sat means being or existent. But, so Belle, welcome, and yeah, keep typing what you're typing, Abir. Belle wrote, "I experienced profound Shaktipat from a spiritual teacher who turned out to be abusive to me. It was deeply disturbing experience. It took me years to recover from now, and now I have zero trust." Yeah, Belle, that was my experience too. My first teacher who I took as a guru, I didn't before I even met that teacher, I walked into he had a center, and then he had 2 guest houses at the center. As I was driving there, I was getting Shaktipat. I'm like, "Oh my god, I'm going home." When I walked into the guest house and he wasn't even there, I had I started to feel something, and by the next day, I woke up a new person. This is without having even physically seen the teacher. I literally became a new person based on his Shaktipat. And yes, extreme abuse. And Belle, I hear you. It took me years to recover. Zero trust. I don't have zero trust, but I have very little trust. And you know, there are some people after they experience that, they won't even think about or talk about anything spiritual anymore. It can be so damaging, so damaging. So my heart goes out to you. And yeah, and please, I hope you rewatch the beginning of the video where I respond a little bit to the accusations. And I've kind of been in a process. You shared those almost 9 months ago, and I've been in my own discerning process with it. So beer. Yeah. Yes, non-duality has been extremely corrupted. Um, and it took me I realized that what I was being taught was not true non-duality in 2005, but it took me 13 years to even begin to have a sense of what. what accurate non-duality was. And I went to the Gita. I went to I read Ramana's teachings holistically, like instead of focusing just on one sentence, like I read all of it and tried to piece together all the parts. I read I read James Schwartz's book, Essence of Enlightenment, which was really helpful. But the seeds for me were planted in the Gita. Um, yeah. Wow, we have 6 people. We've got some dialogue and conversation going. Love it. This is my vision and hope for the future, and, I'm kind of meditating on possibilities, like having Zoom meetings where, people could keep their camera off if they want, or, a little more participatory, but this is beautiful. Thank you. Welcome, 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 welcome. Yeah. I have a lot of respect for Swami Vivekananda. He seemed like a pure being and, or reasonably pure. I don't know if anyone's completely pure. Very devoted. And here's the thing, Swami Vivekananda had a lineage. He had a teacher, Ramakrishna. Swami Vivekananda had an amazing teacher, Ramakrishna, and kind of what I've gotten to is in the spiritual world, you gotta be educated and you gotta be discerning. That's, uh that's, uh that's just the sad truth I've come to. Thanks, Belle. Well, you actually helped me, Belle. I had a little bit too much hero worship. Not a lot, but a little bit extra, and, yeah, yeah, it was really helpful. Alright, dear ones, I need to wrap this up. If anyone else wants to share any thoughts or feelings, and, actually, to the people who are here, so this is cool. We're doing this YouTube. I'm talking, people are commenting. Um, but there's other possibilities. So, hey, Marion, one of them is to do Zoom, and of course, where, it'd be optional to turn on your camera or speak. Uh, you could still use chat. And the interesting thing is with Zoom, it could be a little more private, this, of course, is broadcast broadcast and recorded, whereas Zoom, we could kinda have our own thing and do our own thing, and then I could hypnotize all of you and make you all my minions. Um, but so that's one thing I've thought about is Zoom. There's also this thing, StreamYard, where I can invite like 2 or 3 people up to chat at once, um, where it's actually, yeah, it'd be like my picture and 1 or 2 other people's picture, and I think that could be cool, but, so would love to know what people what people have a felt sense of what they would like. Yeah, I mean, a beer, yeah. So it's a tricky thing. So here you go. So this is one of the distortions in modern non-duality, is this teaching you are already enlightened. So modern non-duality, so Neo-Advaita completely, so classical Advaita Vedanta uh, talks about the personality. Says yes. at the core of you is the self, and the self is already. And the personality needs to be addressed. The personality needs to be enlightened, as it were. And so that's one of the places of confusion that happens in Neo-Advaita. Classical Advaita Vedanta talks about the physical body, the subtle body, and the casual body, and that work needs to be done on the subtle body, that the subtle body is actually the thing that blocks the perception of the self. Um, in Advaita Vedanta, they have the metaphor of the sun is always shining, but it can be blocked by the clouds. And so classical Advaita Vedanta teaches you how to work with the clouds. Neo-Advaita just says, forget about the clouds. The sun's already shining. Uh, so that's so that's one of the very distortions, Abeer, is the teaching you're already enlightened. It's incomplete. According to Advaita Vedanta, that's an incomplete teaching. It would be the complete teaching would be you're already enlightened, and your the deepest part of you is already enlightened, and you have this personality which needs to be worked with, which is obstructing the experience of that. Mhm. Oh, cool. Yeah, I haven't heard of Acharya Prashant, but I appreciate the recommendation, beer. So this was wonderful, and it's haven't seen you in a while, Belle. Welcome, and thank you so much, Abeer, for sharing your thoughts and feelings. I hope what I've shared in response is helpful. As I've said many times, I am not a guru. I am not qualified to guide anyone on the Advaita Vedanta path. What I do is I try and point people towards resources that are traditional Advaita Vedanta, and I point out what is fake Advaita Vedanta, and I point out the harm that was done to me and done by others. Yes, if Swami Sarva Priyananda. I haven't met him personally, but I've watched his channel, and I have respect for him. I believe what he's teaching is classical Advaita. Friends, I want to just keep going, but I need to Bell, that's the note to end on. Trauma can facilitate liberation. Um, there's written in the Bible that Jesus said, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall find comfort." What I take that to mean is, uh, if you get shook up, and trauma can do that, and a false teacher can do that, then if you really get traumatized, nothing in the world is going to satisfy you or bring you peace. I've experienced extreme trauma, but before the spiritual teachers, the fake teachers, but that kind of sealed the deal. Nothing in the world is ever going to bring me happiness. Things can bring me pleasure and joy, yes, but nothing in the world is going to uh, soothe that trauma. Like I need God. That's one of the blessings of trauma. Beautifully said, Belle. Yeah, beautifully said. That's the thing is, yes, I talk a lot, I critique a lot about fake spiritual teaching, but in my view, God has the whole world in its hands, and fake teachers have their role to play as well. And Bell just nailed it. Trauma can facilitate awakening. Thank you so much, everyone, for dropping by. This was delightful, and And thank you to Belle for stimulating this beautiful conversation. Take care, beautifuls. Big love and good healing.